Howdy folks, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am your host, the Mighty Bjorn, and today for I have a Bjorn's Mighty Thoughts video, I'm going to be taking some time and talking about the Sig M5. For those of you who are not keeping up to date with things, which actually this was information that had come out a few months ago now at this point, and I'm kind of slow making a video on my opinions and reactions to the Sig M5 because, well, family, job, and I'm only a part-time YouTuber. It's really hard sometimes for me to get time to make videos that I want to make. And this is a video I've been wanting to make for a while. People have been asking me questions on what do I think, what are my feelings about the whole Sig M5 thing. And I had my initial feelings and opinions about it. And I kind of wanted to do some more research though, so that way I could get a little bit more abreast of the situation, if you will. But for those of you who are not keeping up to date, there is a new rifle, and it is going to be replacing the M4. Now, the M4 has been in service for a long time. It's part of, the AR program, the M16. It's one of the many different variants and versions out there of an Armalite rifle. So, essentially, this is Vietnam-era technology. And, yeah, there's been improvements and things of that nature made over years to the rifle in general. Training's improved, different types of, things, overall design features have been improved. But at its heart, it's still Vietnam-era technology, which, that being said, it was still pretty ahead of its time at the time. It was actually really ahead of its time, especially considering how many rifles have essentially been made that duplicates, if not even exactly clone, the M14, the M16 type rifle over the years. And we're not just talking about American rifles. I mean, we're talking H&K, even just no more than a few years ago, maybe it's been about a decade now, that they came out with the HK-416. And while they made a bunch of changes internally to rifle, at the end of the day, at its heart, it was still an M16, M4 style rifle. At least in general terms. There's a bit more to it when it comes to the H&K 416 and even the M27, which is the Marine Corps variant. But I don't want to dive into that today. I want to focus actually on the M4 and what's my opinion about it. Now, I do want to wind back the clock, and I do want to start this off by talking a little bit about the M14. This is not the first time that the United States has had a battle rifle. Our last battle rifle, if you want to call it that, was actually during the Vietnam War with the M14 rifle. The idea of the M14 rifle is it was supposed to be a rifle that replaced everything. It was supposed to be a replacement for the M1 Garand, the M3 Grease Gun, the BAR, and there was other different types of weapons it was supposed to replace. Essentially, the military wanted to get away from having a wide arsenal of weapons and bring it down to a service rifle and a general purpose machine gun, which would later be introduced as the M60. Now, when Vietnam kicked off, we were still using the Browning 1919s, which were quite heavy, quite old, and quite antiquated. But that being said, we've had a battle rifle in the past, and it kind of looks like we're adopting a new battle rifle. Now, the problem is with the M14 is when used in full automatic, understand that it was a semi-automatic or full automatic rifle. They had a selector switch. In full automatic, it was a very hard to control rifle. Now, it did fire 7.62 51 NATO ammo, or the equivalent of 308. For those of you who don't really know what 7.62 NATO is, it's pretty close to a 308. A little bit lighter than that of a 30-06. Same bullet, different type of, well, slightly different bullet, but the same type of cartridge, slightly different cartridge as well. FUBAR. I'm old and shit. But the point is as the rifle came out, they found that the full auto capabilities of the rifle was very lackluster, very inaccurate, hard to control, and they did try to take steps to help improve that. One of those steps was adding a bipod. There was also a stock redesign. It was still the wooden style stock, but it had more like an actual pistol grip. And that stuff just didn't do enough. And what they were finding, the other problem they were finding too, is the soldiers really couldn't carry enough ammo. The ammo was also quite heavy, as well as the rifle itself was quite heavy. A lot of the soldiers complained about the rifle, the M14 rifle, being heavy. So that's where the M16 kind of comes in place, as it was an intermediate rifle caliber, chambered for 5.56 Nato or 223. The rifle was, instead of made of wood and metal, it was made of more like stamped metal and polymers, and it made the rifle a lot lighter. Like the M16, if I recall correctly, is 8 pounds versus the M14 was slightly over 10, if I recall correctly. No matter which way you look at it, the M16 was a lot lighter. The other advantage of the M16 over the M14 is the bullet itself was a lot lighter. You can literally carry almost twice the amount of ammo that you can for a 7.62 style rifle. Now, it still used the 20-shot magazines, but there was also things being done to convert it over to using 30-shot magazines, or at least create 30-shot magazines. They just were not very good when the M16 first introduced. So this was a rifle made by Eugene Stoner, or at least that was his design. At first, it was the Air Force who picked up the M16. Now, their version of the M16 did not have the forward assist. However, the Army was very, very stern about having the forward assist on the rifle. There's a lot of debate on why or why not, why it shouldn't have had the forward assist, how useful the forward assist is, especially compared to now. Is the forward assist still a feasible element or even necessary element? I don't want to get into that here. I'm just trying to give you a quick, brief history of the rifle. But either ways, things would come down. They would add the forward assist. They would make a couple other little tweaks and changes. One was the flash hider. And then the M16 would end up going to get full adoption service. It would be adopted by the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, and the Army. Now, that being said, the M14 still... Excuse me. There we go. I'm old shit. The M14 still does remain in service in limited fashion. It's been used over the years as a sniper rifle, as well as it's been used with other implements as well. So it is, a still fairly common, I wouldn't say fairly common, but it is still in use. And the reason why the M14 was brought back for the War on Terror, mostly used as a DMR, is because, well, the M4s that the troops are being issued really are not very effective at extremely long ranges that they were engaging at in the War of Terror, in particularly Afghanistan, where they were fighting literally from ridgeline to ridgeline, and the engagement ranges were 700, 800, 900 meters away. So what they came up with was limited introductions of DMRs. Now, understand that, with all this being said, that the M4 is an evolution of the M16. So still Vietnam era technology, still in general terms the same rifle. It's just been shortened and other changes were made. I mean, this is, the M4 is pretty much the rifle that we have now. And it's pretty much been the rifle that the United States military has had for a very, very long time now. So basically, with all that being said, in the War on Terror, the whole 9 yards, and the problems that they were having with engagement ranges with the M16s and the M4s in Afghanistan, the military has decided to adopt a new rifle, and that's the Sig M5. Now, the Sig M5 is actually chambered in 223 Fury, or sorry, no, not 223 Fury, 277 Fury, or 6.8 by 51. So generally, it's using the same cartridge as like the M14 used, but it's necked down just a little bit more to fit the 6.8 bullet. Let me show you what I mean. Right here's a couple different calibers of bullets. As you can see, you got 5.56 Nato. You also got the Soviet 7.62 by 39, the 6.8 SPC, which I don't know whatever happened to this round. I know the rifle kind of went to the wayside itself. This was the bullet. The 6.8 SPC was designed to go into the Remington ACR, and that rifle kind of went to the wayside, but I don't really know why the bullet did, because literally looking at it, I think it would be a better replacement than what we are getting. And this is where I want to dive into. The one that says Hybrid Fury, that is the 277. That is the new 6.8 millimeter bullet. And one flaw I see with this mentality is this ammunition is really expensive. So what you have here is you have a two-piece casing. Instead of a solid brass casing, well, you know, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So what you see there is the two-piece casing. But then there's also a one-piece casing for it, your traditional brass casing for it, which is what they're going to use for the training ammunition. Now, one problem is to get all the performance out of the bullet that they wanted to get for the military trials, they designed a new casing, which is a two-piece bullet. So what you have is you have essentially a stainless steel tube, hence is that nice shiny stainless steel bottom for the primer base, and then it's got a brass sleeve over top of it that mates to the bullet. And this kind of herein lies a little problem with me. First off, this ammunition is actually really doggone expensive, from what I understand. So expensive, in fact, that the military is opting for a training round as well as a combat round. Now, that is pretty typical that there's a training round and a combat round. So, like with 5.56, and understand this is where most of my experience is. I used 7.62 Nato, but that was kind of in the machine guns. And I know more about the 5.56 from my time in the service because I was trained on the M16, as well as I personally own an AR-15. So, let's talk more about the 5.56 and how this works out when it comes to combat ammunition and training ammunition. Now, the thing is with training ammunition is the training ammunition that you normally have is normally a full metal jacket round that's made as cheap as possible and performs pretty dang close to an actual combat round. Normally what you get with like your combat rounds is you get a slightly heavier bullet, and usually they have a penetrator or they have some kind of coating. Like what you have here with the 5.56 is actually a steel penetrator core. This is the M855 round. And that green tip pretty much tells you that it has the steel penetrator. However, that being said, there was also a 62 grain full metal jacket slug round that is, in general terms, performs exactly the same way. It just doesn't have as much penetration. So when it comes to training and accuracy, particularly on the range, whatever your duty ammo is, so duty ammo tends to be expensive. In this case, not so much, because actually 5.56 ammo is really, really cheap, especially green tip. But with like 9mm, if you're going to per se use, I don't know, a black Talon armor piercing bullet, or a black, sorry, not an armor piercing, they're not armor piercing, a black Talon hollow point in your 9mm service pistol, you want a practice round that's cheaper because you're going to fire more practice rounds out of your service pistol than duty rounds. Duty ammunition tends to be expensive. Practice ammunition you want cheap, but you want it to perform the same as your duty ammo out of your gun when it comes to things such as velocity, accuracy, and reliability. So that way the training you're getting on the range with your gun is the same as when you draw your firearm in the field, needing to use it for defense, or in this case for the military, probably more like offense. But here's kind of the issue. This new casing is so expensive, this new ammunition is so expensive, that they're adopting a training ammunition and a combat ammunition, and the training ammunition does not perform similarly, especially when it comes to velocity and accuracy, to the training round, or to the combat round. And I feel that's going to kind of create a problem, sort of, kind of. Now, there is kind of a caveat to this, which I'll get into in a little bit. But if you're, say, going to use the Sig M5, the Sig Spear, with an ACOG or a hollow sight or a red dot, if you're using the non-hybrid casing, you're not going to get the velocity, thus you're not going to get the penetration, nor are you going to get the accuracy that you're going to get out of the hybrid case ammo. And that is, in my opinion, definitely going to create a problem. Sorry, excuse me, folks. Now, the next thing I want to talk about with the Sig Spear is, this is kind of an odd design feature, is the two charging handles. I don't think this is a bad thing, but I think it's actually kind of unnecessary that it has two charging handles. And I know kind of what they're doing here is, one, the military has been kind of wanting to get away from the rear charging handle on the back of the upper receiver, which is what number 2 is. And number 1 is the side charging handle. And the military's been kind of wanting to go with that, although they've been kind of odd about it, because at first they want it to be reciprocating, which means every time the rifle fires, the handle actually also comes back as well. And then they want it to go to a non-reciprocating. They can't seem to make up their mind on how they want this charging handle to be. They just know they want a charging handle on the side. They don't even know where they want it located, which kind of throws me off with this design feature. So I kind of get where they're going with this. Then this is going to be like the ease of training type thing, where the people that are trained on like the AR platform rifles, the M16, the AR-15s, the AR-10s, etc., they all got the same type of charging handle. So for those kind of people, they're not going to have to take time to really retrain into a new style charging handle. They can just continue using what they've been using their whole time. But my pitch about this is if the military wants to go to a side charging handle, either if it's going to be reciprocating or non-reciprocating, doesn't matter. Like, either now's the time, we're adopting a new rifle, shit or get off the pot. I know we're married to this idea of having that charging handle there to make it easier for troops currently in service. But if you don't get rid of it now, you're pretty much never going to get rid of it. Because then all the troops that are training onto the Sig M5, they're going to have the option to use either charging handle. And so you're going to get some troops that are going to get married to the idea of using the non-reciprocating charging handle on the side. And you're going to get some troops that are going to get married to the idea to using the charging handle that I have indicated as number 2, which is the typical AR style charging handle. Now, that being said, this is an evolution, another evolution once again, of an AR platform rifle. Actually, it's based more on the MCXs, but the MCXs in general terms are AR platform rifles. Now, the next thing I think is kind of a cool feature. Now, this is definitely kind of a plus to me, but also kind of a minus, is that the stock is the stock does fold to the side, as well. It's telescoping, so it's telescoping folding stock. Now, what that does is that allows you to adjust your stock length to get basically a more comfortable length of pull, as well as if you want to fold it off to the side out of your way, maybe because you're in a vehicle or you're in a helicopter or something like that, some kind of tight confined space, you can fold it up out of your way, and it does lock into position from what I've seen. I don't see an issue there. The only real issue I see there is like with the M4s, they have the buffer tube, the buffer spring, and the whole 9 yards. It goes into the stock. So that kind of helps absorb recoil. That may not really matter here. From what I can tell, it really doesn't. It might not be a bad thing, though, to have that if they would have had it, it might have actually been an improvement on the rifle. Not saying that in general terms, how the rifle shoots, the amount of recoil, etc., that the rifle gives is bad. But it might have been a better improvement if they had it. Now, the next thing is that I see is the new optic. And this is this kind of reverts back to the caveat with the ammo I was talking about. So the new optic is supposed to be a fire control system optic. Essentially, you have, I think it's a 1x6 ACOG style scope, and then it's got a ballistic computer on top of it, and essentially you program what ammo you're firing. Now, here's kind of my problem with this optic, and this is kind of like one of those things that this could end up being an issue in the field, especially if something serious happens. So the one problem is with this type of optic, and understand that this has been something that companies have been working on for a long time, especially with like the longer range sniper rifles, if you will. But so with this, you can, if say you're using the training ammo, you can set a preset and your computer will do all the work for you and tell you where to need to aim on your target. That's the idea of this scope. But also, with that being said, you can also switch it over to the combat ammo. And it'll tell you where you need to shoot. And that's kind of where my problem is. It tells you where you need to aim and where to shoot. Batteries die in the field. Optics can get broken. I just foresee this optic being a crutch. We got this nice $20,000 per unit optic. I believe it was $20,000 per unit. It's going to cost $20,000 per unit optic, and honestly, I would rather take that money and spend it in training over spending it in a shiny optic. Or how about instead we just spend it on proper hybrid ammo that can be used for training, and the training can be better, much more simplified. We don't need a nice shiny new optic. Now, don't get me wrong, for something like this, for like a DMR rifle, where like you might engage at targets 800 meters away, or a sniper rifle where you might be 1,200 meters away, I see this optic being a great benefit. But that being said, snipers are still trained into not using something like this. So for them, it'd be a benefit, not so much as a crutch. How's this going to be with the standard armory soldier, the standard grunt that's not getting as much training as, say, the sniper or the Delta Force asset, the Delta Force operator, or ranger, because those are the kind of soldiers that are getting a lot more advanced training, a lot more individualized training. For them, this optic may not be such a crutch. That's neither here nor there. I feel this optic can be a crutch, and when you consider how many that they need, it's also quite expensive. $20,000. I bet you the rifle doesn't even cost $20,000. Now, the next thing that I see is kind of an issue, and this is probably actually my biggest gripe, especially as the Army becomes more and more inclusive, is the weight. The M4A1, as you can see here, that weighs in at 6.43 pounds. That is empty. No optics on it, pretty much just how you see here. And then the Sig M5, empty, if I understand the information correctly, it is empty with the suppressor, is going to weigh 9.8 pounds. That's over 3 pounds heavier than the M4. Now, the rifle's becoming more inclusive. The Army is becoming more inclusive. You know, women can now serve in the infantry. I can dig into that one, but right now is not the time. But imagine, if you will, and of course I say here and I see what's going on with the military and see a group of people that are softer than when I was in the service. They got it easier than when I had it. And I don't want to dive into that one too much either, but the training doesn't seem as intense. It doesn't seem as grueling, let alone the training for the average Vietnam soldier was a lot more grueling and intense than I went through. And they complained about the M14 being a little over 10 pounds. Now the Sig M5 weighs 9.8 pounds empty. When you put a 20-shot mag into it, understand it's only got 20-shot mags right now from what I've seen. That's definitely going to put the rifle over 10 pounds. Let alone then you're going to put a shiny optic on it, which I don't know how much the optic weighs. Couldn't get that spec. Maybe a grip. Maybe, you know, a peck, a light. Once you start putting all your shiny tactical man toys on there, you got a rifle that's probably 12, maybe 13 pounds. Soldiers complained about a 10-pound rifle in the past, and we got another 10-pound rifle that soldiers aren't going to want to use. I'm just saying, you know, and don't get me wrong, I've carried around 10-pound rifles. I've carried around Thompson submachine guns. I've carried around a BAR. You know, at first a BAR is not that bad, but when you get about halfway through the day and you're carrying a 20-pound light machine gun, it gets quite heavy. You know, so you really don't want to add more weight than you already got to carry, besides the fact that they're going to only be able to carry, they're going to have to carry less ammo because the ammo is going to weigh more. The magazines, they're going to take up space. They're only 20-shot magazines versus 30-shot magazines. And the list just goes on and on and on. Plus, you still got to carry grenades, canteen, rations, poncho, toothbrush, whatever else. You know, you can only carry so much weight. I believe the weight is around 60% of your body weight is the maximum amount of weight you should carry for any extended period of time. And at that point, you start getting past the law of diminishing returns. And once you even get further up, I think it's around 70 or 75% of your body weight, it gets to the point where it's actually more stress than it's worth. Your body will just tire out too quickly. Your muscles will tire out and stuff of that nature. So if you're going to be in a field for an extended period of time with a 10-pound rifle, yeah, that's going to suck. And I've seen people make arguments for, well, the military's mechanized, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, well, the military's been mechanized for a long time. That still doesn't stop troops from having to hump it for a long period of time. Now, the next thing I want to mention about is the fact that the Marine Corps is not adopting the new rifle. They are married to the 5.56. They are married to the M27. They literally just got new M27s delivered. They are not going to get the new rifle at all. I don't know about certain groups such as Delta Force, Navy SEALs, etc. I could see the rifle being good for them in limited fashion on that end, but yeah, they're not adopting the new rifle. And then NATO is also in the same place where there's a lot of NATO countries now and NATO allies. They're all have gotten married to the 5.56 round, even though they originally didn't want to. That's another story. And there's some of the countries have just adopted brand new 5.56 rifles. I'm looking at you, Poland. So they just adopted brand new 5.56 rifles literally 2 years ago, if I remember correctly, they're not going to be thrilled about this idea about the military, United States Army, adopting a 6.8 by 51 caliber round. And then, are we going to have the same situation that we had in the past with the 5.56 where, well, because we're getting the the new 6.8 millimeter cartridge, is everybody going to be forced to do it? Because that's what happened in the past. When we adopted the 5.56, we forced the rest of NATO to take 5.56. And if I was those other countries, I'd pretty much look at the United States and go, well, how about fuck you? In all seriousness. But that's a short subject in itself. Now, with that being said, okay, we're adopting this new round. We're adopting this new rifle. But what about the Sig Scar? The 6.8 by 51 round, the 277 Fury, in some regards doesn't even outperform the 7.62 NATO. The Scar H fires 762 NATO. I don't understand why we need a new rifle when we have a perfectly legitimate rifle that I'm aware of available. And it's been around longer. And it doesn't need a special optic. And it doesn't need special ammo. And it's already made its rounds through special forces groups. So they're already set with it. It's got more attachments. It's more user-friendly. And it even has a folding stock to it. Telescoping folding stock. I'm not sure if there's really a need for the Sig M5 when we have the FN Scar. And as far as I could tell, for the longest time, we were getting married to the idea of possibly adopting the FN Scar for regular service. So I'm not quite sure what happened there on that end. I really don't see a rifle that's better than the Scar from what I have seen. And in all honesty, I think the new rifle's a waste compared to the Scar. But whatever. And then, of course, there's some controversy as well with some lobbying and SIG, which it kind of sounds like there might be some lobbying going again here with the Sig M5. Understand that just recently the military in general, the United States Armed Forces, adopted the Sig 17, the M17, to replace the Beretta over keeping the Beretta or adopting the Glock. Now, I'm not a Glock fanboy, but if the military would have adopted the Glock, I would have got it because a lot of countries, a lot of NATO countries, are using Glocks. They're using Glock 17s. So it kind of would have made sense for us to adopt the Glock as in kind of we're all sharing the same pistol. We can all share the same parts. We're all sharing the same ammo. It kind of becomes a logistics thing. I don't understand why. They say it's price tag. That the price, if I understand it correctly, it was something like the price per unit was a little bit more for the Sig 17 over the Beretta, but the overall price and support and things of that nature was better for the Sig than the Beretta. I mean, that being said, did we really need a new pistol? Understand there's only certain soldiers that actually use their pistols on a regular basis. I was one of those soldiers that used my pistol on a regular basis because I was a tank crewman. I had to be certified, authorized, the whole 9 yards with my M9 pistol, my Beretta M9. I actually didn't need to be qualified for the M16, even though I was still trained and qualified. But, and it kind of sounded like there was a lot of lobbying going on in the background, and I kind of feel that there might be some lying when it comes to this pistol, especially consider that this was a pistol. And understand, folks, I have nothing against SIG. I actually do like SIG pistols. I don't like this particular SIG pistol, which is the P320. And understand that nobody wanted a P320 until the military adopted the fucking thing. Nobody wanted the fucking pistol. I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad pistol, but it kind of seems like the pistol that nobody wanted till the Army said, oh, yeah, we're going to get those. We want those. And then suddenly everybody else wanted them. I don't know. I just don't know. So the Sig M5, is it a mistake? I do see some benefits of the Sig M5. It can engage at further ranges than the M16 and the M4 can. Understand that the M4 is not made to be a long-range rifle. It's made to be a carbine. So it's not a long-range rifle in the first place. And actually, my speculation, I was very skeptical of the military adopting the M4 in the first place as a standard issue rifle because it's a carbine. It's not a rifle. So it's kind of doing the M4 has kind of been forced into a position to do a job that it wasn't designed or meant to do. And sure, here's a rifle that can do what the M4 can't do, but we already had rifles in the United States military that can do what the M4 couldn't do, and they do what the Sig M5 does. And now they're making this the standard issue rifle. As I've quoted, it's heavier. You know, I foresee this as being a huge, huge mistake. You know, the 20-shot magazines, the heavier ammunition means soldiers can carry less ammo. Now, there's some armor-piercing benefits to the 6.8 over the 5.56. But we also had other alternatives, too, of light-caliber bullets that showed promising armor-piercing performance, as well as being lighter than 6.8 and not needing some kind of special caliber, specialized optics, etc., that the Sig M5 needs. So what do I think at the end of the day? Yeah, the Sig M5 is a huge mistake. I think it would be fine as a limited rifle that would be used for different types of roles that the M4 doesn't fit or that the M16 doesn't fit. But as a general overall service rifle in general, especially when they're also going to keep M4s in service. So let's tally this up. We have to supply 5.56 ammo, 7.62 Nato, 9mm parabellum, 50 caliber, 50 BMG, and now we're going to have another round with a new weapon that has its own parts, and all this we need logistics for. I just feel if all hell breaks loose, and I'm talking like pure level warfare, we're going to war with China, we're going to war with Russia, I feel this is actually a really bad idea. And honestly, I think it's hilarious that I don't know if it's the Army that feels it's a good idea, but whoever feels it's a good idea, I feel it's really hilarious. And going by even what what you could argue weapon experts say, they don't really sound in favor of this rifle either. They're not saying it's a bad rifle. They're not saying it's a piece of shit. And I'm not trying to say that it's a piece of shit here, but I'm trying to point out that this thing has a lot of flaws for what they want it to do and what it's supposed to do and what it's supposed to replace. And it just doesn't fit that bill. Maybe that's just me, but whatever. I'm just some YouTuber, Army veteran. What the hell do I know I'm talking about? Anyway, folks, this was a quite long video, but hopefully y'all enjoyed it. Hopefully y'all gleaned some information about it. Share this around with your buddies. I really appreciate that kind of thing. It helps me grow as a YouTuber. And, yeah, hopefully y'all enjoyed it once again and have yourself a wonderful day.